everyone, welcome. It's so nice to see all of you here. It really is. And I know that we're wearing masks again, but it's so nice to be able to gather with people again and see each other. Something we really missed over the past year when we were not able to do this, but we always thought of September 2021 as kind of the grand reemergence of the Gordy Gallery art shows. And so I'm very glad to be able to have Jeff Brackett be the first one of those major exhibitions that have been here. But first, a couple of things. Some of you may remember it was 3 years ago that we did a show here which was in support of a Hurley Goodall statue that got raised over here in Fireman's Park. And I want you to know that there was a great success, and of course many of you know that the Hurley Goodall statue is over there now as well, and Hurley Goodall has passed away. But since then, Hurley Goodall has been the recipient of a Mayor's Arts Award for Lifetime Achievement. And then today, right here in our gallery this morning, the Indiana Arts Commission came up and they awarded him a Governor's Arts Award. And it was awarded posthumously to Julius Anderson, who was his longtime caretaker and his great nephew, I believe. So it was a very touching moment and a lot of interviewing going on and memories about Hurley Goodall, who had a huge impact on the arts. People think of him as a civil rights leader, but he had a huge impact on the arts. And the reason he was reason the arts were important to him was because art is a way to represent the underrepresented people that he was talking on behalf of. So he wrote books. He found himself to be a great writer, and so the arts ended up being the voice for him to be able to do exactly what he wanted to do. So I wanted to share that all with you because that event that we had 3 years ago was one of the coolest things that ever happened here. So I wanted to remember that to you as well. The other thing I wanted to remember is that the Mayor's Arts Awards are coming up here in November as well. And there is a nomination process going on, which we are inviting the public to nominate people who are benefiting the residents of Muncie in the arts. And there's 8 categories. Go to munciearts.org and find the nomination process. There's a card here on the table if you have any interest in taking one of these. But please do consider nominating somebody. There's lots of people I see in the room here who need to be nominated. So maybe I'll do that too. But they're right over here. This show with Jeff Brackett is a long time coming. And this show was scheduled, I can't even remember the month, but it was sometime last year, over a year ago. And I went over to visit Jeff early in 2020, and he showed me an awful lot of work that he was doing. And we had picked out some things, and my God, it has changed so much. The work has changed so much since that visit. It has progressed so much through that pandemic year. And I'm very glad that we are now able to get around to actually doing this in a very ambitious way. So, Jeff Brackett.
I'm glad that you gave that type of introduction. I'll get to the work in a minute. I've got some people to thank. And I just saw another one come in and reminded me not everybody made my list. So I start off, right, not talking about the art, but thanking first my wonderful wife, Meg. This is our wedding anniversary, our 26th anniversary. What better place to spend it than right here, looking at my art. I want to thank both Carl and Barbara. My gosh, they're so patient, kind, caring. They help me so much. Several meetings, at least a couple hours. And thanking Mark Peretta. He framed it. It is amazing. I thank him again for the beautiful work. LHG, right? This is the left-hand group. There are only 3 of us, no one else is allowed, right? So, me, obviously, Tim Berg, and Kate Thorson. About 4 years ago, we started meeting regularly. This is probably once a month, usually at Savage's. And we talk about art and pedagogy and how we can kind of integrate the two. There are no resolutions or answers to this, but lots of great conversations. During the pandemic, we decided, hey, that's not enough. So we started meeting over Zoom every week, right? Which is a lot, really, given that we were doing so much over Zoom for classes. But this was something we really enjoyed, right? So it was really great. I thank Ball State, right? 2 years ago, I was given special assigned leave for a sabbatical where I produced a lot of my larger pieces. I don't think any of them are here because, like Carl said, I kind of changed and shifted a lot of stuff. But it was because of that that I was able to kind of integrate a lot of my scholarship and art. I'm doing a shout out to my Wabash cohort. They knew who they are. They asked me to say that, in fact. And the School of Art, my gosh, several professors are here tonight. I've taken courses with many of them. I'm enrolled in one currently, and I would be in class right now. But I'm not there. One other person, he's up in Massachusetts, Andy Ruttman. He is a scholar of Buddhism, and he and I had a wonderful conversation 2 years ago. We were out there for Thanksgiving, and we were talking more about art and pedagogy, and I was struggling with how to work with both of them, etc. And he came up with this idea of doing art as religious studies. He said, just do it, claim it, it's yours. And a lot of what I'm going to show you or talk about tonight is related to that, right? How I integrated those. And the person who came in that I just noticed, and I'm going to mention right now, Karen Fisher of Art Mart, she's a fabulous member of our community, and she's one of the reasons why I started drawing intensively about 5 years ago. I went in there to get some pens, and she said, hey Jeff, have you heard of Inktober? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said that you draw something in ink, post it on social media daily during October. I drew a mandala and I posted it, and honestly I thought it was really good, but I didn't know what the response would be, and people loved it. And I thought, oh, interesting. And I started doing more, and I ended up doing about 25 of them. And it seems that everything that I do like 25, and then it's not that I burn out, but I think, okay, I've done that. And I switched to something else. So thank you, Karen, for getting me started on all this. It's your production, right? So this is really great. What I want to talk about, though, in terms of the art, is really this one here. This is one where I mentioned LHG. I kept these top 2 pieces a secret from them, which is kind of weird because we text each other everything we're working on, right? We get feedback, critiques, encouragement. But because it was summer when I did these, it was easy to get away with it, right? We were doing vacations and stuff, and I thought, you know what? You see everything that I draw. How about when you show up, you're surprised too? So that's why I did that. The title of the show is Forgetting the Ox. It's something that comes from Buddhist teaching, Chinese Buddhist teaching, ox herding story. It varies in terms of the number of pictures, but there are 10 different pictures, and they're tracing the path of enlightenment. And what I started to see were parallels in what I was doing with my art and what was going on with this path toward enlightenment. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the Buddhist stories because then I feel like I'm in class and then I'll turn on the professorial stuff. I don't really want to do that. What I will say, though, is with the process, these 10 stages, what happens at the bottom is really that, or the first stages, is that this seeker, I'll call him, has this idea of enlightenment. It's like when he first sees that his desires align with the teachings of the tradition, and he is intent on following through on that path. Right, so then you get to the next one, which is really kind of the middle stage of these 10 pictures that also have poems. And here is really integrating that path with his life and fully committed to continuing on the path. Then you get to the top one, which is the 7th stage. This is Forgetting the Ox. This is where you no longer need the ox. It's almost like, it's similar to another story in Buddhism where you talk about the raft getting to the other side of the shore. Right? How long do you need the raft? When you get to the other shore, you're going to pack it up and carry it, right? You don't need it anymore. And that's sort of what I'm thinking about in terms of how I'd apply the Buddhist teaching. Where I saw the parallels, though, were my thinking about becoming an artist. Right? I teach religious studies. I'm not trained as an artist, but I have some background in art. My first year of college, I thought I really liked art classes, and I was an art major for about a year. The problem for me at the time was I thought that being an artist meant you drew photorealistic images, and especially of people. And I couldn't do that at all. I was horrible at it. I really liked graphic design, and you might be able to see some of that influence here. But what I think of in terms of the parallels between that Buddhist story and my own story is at the bottom, right? It's like, I'm starting to think more about being an artist. I started off by drawing these mandalas. I shifted, I did all kinds of other patterns. Everything I do is filled with patterns. But I started doing what I call power lines, right? That's what I call this series, where I just draw a line, intentionally put some kind of blip or movement. I got better and better at shaping them how I wanted them to look. So I knew that if I did this little shape here, it would get much bigger and I could do all these different things. What looks like it's just random, it is, but I got a little better at that. So here at the bottom, thinking about becoming an artist, but it's kind of split, right? It's not like, nothing's really integrated yet. But this is a style that I did a lot. I used to fill the whole page. This is like one of the first times that I even left a gap. Right? You notice there are bigger gaps up there. In this middle stage, is that already 10 minutes? So the middle stage, though, this is supposed to represent also the evolution of my sort of line drawing, right? So this stage, I started experimenting more with doing more interweaving of the line work. Right? So that's really what's going on here. I call these ribbons, all these kind of things here. And I introduced color. I had not been using color. Everything was just black ink. I figured that was enough. It was difficult enough to do that. And then you see that I shifted a bit. I started putting in these things that look kind of like underwater growth. I don't know, something going on here. It looks sort of organic. And I continued that up here so it looks sort of like trees or something like that again. But this is the middle stage. So I did several drawings that were similar. Then you see when you get to the top, right, and when I look at it, it'll fall over, right? But I started incorporating, again, this technique here continues up, spreads around, and I did a lot more of this work, which is basically the piece at the top is representing what I'm doing now. Right? What I'll be doing next week, who knows, right? It might change again. But I found that I really liked big, sweeping blue lines. I don't know what it is. I have 20 different colors of ink that I can use, and I use the same ones so many times because I just love the way that it contrasts with the black. So I started doing these sweeping lines, and I thought that I was going to leave lots of negative space, but I liked it so much, I just kept doing it. So what you have at the top, again, forgetting the ox, right? So you should have no more need of a raft or anything like that on the path. This is a point where I fully embrace being an artist, right? So I start at the bottom, I'm not really sure. It's like, well, I kind of want to be an artist, but I'm a professor, what am I doing? Here, I start saying, no, when I sit down to draw this stuff, I actually stand, but I think, I'm an artist, right? I'm claiming this is not a hobby. Right? It may have started kind of like a hobby, and people have asked, is it a hobby? No, this is not a hobby. This is who I am at the core of my being. I mean, this is a complete extension of who I am. There are lots of reasons why there's a repetition, etc., and I could talk more about that if you're interested. But we get to the top. There's where, again, I fully embraced that. And I had like this really weird moment at the top where I started shaping this in different ways, and I started thinking, where's that ox? Where'd the ox go? If you look at this carefully, well, not carefully. There are ways to look at this where the ox is there. And it's fully intentional and it's fully abstract. All right? So the ox is there, the head is over at this end, and those are like horns, right? The tail, I almost put in an eye. At one point it looked like there was an eye, and I was like, I don't want to be such a literalist. The idea is to forget the ox. So I intentionally went back in and made it more abstract. So continuing these lines, and then I played around with like jigsaw puzzle type stuff, and intentionally put openings in it. And the idea is also at the top, this stuff is circling back around, again, suggesting that there's no resolution. Right? This is not a process that ends. This is a process that just started or just began. So there's a lot more going on there. I could talk about this for 3 hours. I won't. I'm going to write about it. I don't know how much time I've spent. Does somebody have a gauge on how
1601,
I've already
1602.
done 16.
No, well, Carl took some of that.
Oh,
I'll give him
okay.
4 minutes.
I could do this really easily. So over here, this is a piece where I really incorporated ribbons for the first time. It was the first one. When I finished, I thought, wow, that is awesome. I feel that way about a lot of the work that's on the wall tonight because it's all so fresh. Carl said, oh, you had all this work. Yeah, and then I drew all new stuff because I thought, it's okay, but I have to keep moving. This one here is about, I call it transmigration, right? There are a lot of Buddhist themes in this. Where it's kind of like a sagging tree, and then the blue is like this new life kind of bursting out from there. Here I'm doing much more with negative space, right? So if you see the kind of how this stuff is operated, I used to put pen to paper and fill the whole thing. These ones, I don't know why I started doing it, but I really enjoy playing more with negative space. So this has a lot of empty or negative space. This one I've written about on my blog. It's called F2020. And that's the sense that I get when I look at it. It is frenetic. It has the colors of blue and red, which if you're not aware of political symbols, you should look that up. There are literally things that look like thorns. This is all intentional. There's purple, but the purple is never related to the red and blue. It's always separate. So again, plug for the blog. I say a lot more about the interpretation. This over here was one of the images for advertising. These are things where I just start moving my hand. And somehow it just feels like it's just natural at this point, and I enjoy that. This one I think is the most different from all the others. It's called Sati. It's often translated as mindfulness. So it's obviously a Buddha head. And it just starts scribbling, right? And it's so radically different from all of these very precise lines. And I really enjoy doing it. It's the only one that I've done this size. I've done some a little bit smaller. And because I talk a lot about Buddhist themes in this, these are 4 different images that I drew that relate to the Eightfold Path. So these are 4 of the 8 symbolic drawings. And if people want to know whether I'm obsessed with counting and things like that, there are 175 marks around each one of the circles. So it's just, the other thing, so that I go from very big, and then there are small pieces. If anyone wants to look, there's a series of 22, I think, small pieces, and those were my latest. And I look forward to questions or comments, and I think that's probably.
I have a question because I've been getting it all night.
Oh, good.
Okay. So when you start a piece like this piece in front of us, how do you know where to start? Like, where do you start? Like, do you start in the middle? Do you start at the top, the corner? I mean, where do you even begin?
Yeah, that's a good question. So each one is totally different, and the only thing I had in mind here was I wanted a lot of negative space. And literally what I did, I went like that. Because I didn't know how to start. I often don't know how to start. In fact, my daughter is here and she's doing this Facebook Live. And I've had her come in and I said, take this pencil, put a mark that goes in all 4 quadrants on this paper. I'm leaving, I'll come back. And she said, what do you mean? I said, just do it, right? And I came back and she had put the marks, and those were where I put the first ink lines, and then drew from there. Because otherwise I get too caught up in thinking about what I should do. All I need to do is put the pen to the paper. Well, that's a good question. Oh, there's another question.
How long did it take you to do it?
This took 100 hours. Yeah, it takes a long time.
Each one?
Oh no, that was total. When I do a large piece, I keep track of everything. I do, like I said, the day, the time I start, when I stop, stop, and then I add it up at the end, and they usually come out to be 30 to 40 hours. This was 30, that was 40.
How much work?
Sarah?
You said that there's, you said that if you want to ask about repetition, ask about repetition, so I'm asking.
Oh yeah. So I think I said that I came up with like 10 different drafts of what I was going to say tonight, and all sound like I was teaching a class, so I didn't do it. And there are different lenses I'm looking through when I look at my art tonight, and one of them is through asking this question, or my research question was, what does it mean when you say that somebody, an artist or a piece of art is influenced by Zen? Right, that just becomes huge, right? That's one of them. And another one is what is it like to draw as a Buddhist? That opens up cans of worms. And then I found out in November 2020 that I have Asperger's. There's another set of worms, right? So I added a new layer. What I was looking at with my research was this question of what does it mean to say that art is spiritual? And what are the differences between what art professionals say and what people in religious studies say? We say very different things about this term spiritual. And so I was tracing that. When I found out I had Asperger's, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a new layer. So I started working on this project, this book, and I call it, what do I call it? Zen and the Artful Buddhist. Asperger's, Art in Academia. And it'll probably never be finished, right? And there are reasons for that too, right? Because with Asperger's, what you do is you go further and further and further in compiling more and more stuff. More details, there are always more questions, and there's never a resolution. Which is, I guess, a metaphor for life too, but I mean, that's how that works. So the repetition that I'm taking a long time to get to is like, I'm really good at stuff that other people might say is tedious. Well, I could show you some of these smaller pieces where I'm drawing them and Maggie comes in the room, she goes, what are you doing? and I don't get it. I'm like, I'm just drawing. And she's like, oh, and then she just leaves. Yeah, but that's mainly the repetition. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. You're going to be around for a little while, and
Yep.
so I hope that lots of you will stay around.